Hey guys, my name is Shreyas and welcome to Simple Chemistry. Now, in the previous unit, we talked about theories, and we talked about how theories change with time uh, with the, with the discovery of new evidence and um, different experiments. And in this video, we're going to be talking about one of the greatest theories to man, which has been constantly changing with time, and that's atomic theory. The atomic theory basically describes how the atom, um, our view of the atom, what is the atom made of, how does it behave, and it's been changing with time. So here we're going to really kind of have a brief history lesson where we talk about how the atom has been changing with time. Okay. So the Greeks believed that this is BC, a very long time ago. The ancient Greeks believed that all matter was made up of four basic elements: fire, water, air, and earth. Okay, so they believe that everything that we saw today was made up of these things. And they also hypothesized that matter is infinitely divisible. That means that you can keep breaking it down and down and down and down and down and down and down to tiny and tinier parts, and you would never ever get to something so tiny that it couldn't be divided anymore. Okay, now 400 BC, these three scientists, Democritus and Leucippus and Aristotle, they have their own conjecture. So Democritus and Leucippus, which are both Greek philosophers, believe that matter can be broken down to small particles called atomos, and this is where we get the word atoms from. So, in contrast to that, Aristotle believed that that continuous matter made everything up. So he believed that everything was just made of this huge stuff, like this continuous matter, and he called it Heil. Okay. Now, so these are conflicting views here, Democritus and Aristotle. But people tended to side with Aristotle during that time because Aristotle, if you didn't know, Aristotle was a great philosopher and he had all these great theories on things. Most of them which were wrong, but people sided with Aristotle there. So it took many, many years for that idea to change, that matter was made of atoms. But during that time, the long period of time, there's alchemy also came up. Alchemy, for many years, alchemists tried to turn cheap metals into gold. This was a very big thing. Now we know that trying to turn any metal into gold, it's very, very difficult. You have to use nuclear chemistry in order to do that, and it's not practical to do that because you're not going to make any money using nuclear reactors in order to turn metals into gold. But obviously, scientists at the time, they're called alchemists, by the way, did not know that. They tried to turn cheap metals into gold, and that was a very big thing for many, many years. And the reason why this is important to chemistry is that although they never succeeded, they discovered many of the elements that they see today, kind of by accident, So alchemy is very critical. Then, I talked about here, right, how people sided with Aristotle, so for many, many years, people just believed that matter was made up of Heil. But then finally, the scientist named Boyle comes about, and Boyle conducted many quantitative experiments on gases. Remember, again, quantitative means anything involving numbers, right? So he conducted many quantitative experiments on gases, and we'll be talking about that later, but make sure you know that. And he published the skeptical chemist, and here is really where the sciences of chemistry and physics were born. Kind of like how we see recently nanotechnology was born in recent times, in the same way Boyle kind of invented these subjects, So from there, the thing that we need to take is that he came up with the idea of the element, and the element he defined was a chemical was an element unless it can be broken down into two or more substances. So he gave that entity the definition of what an element is. And here, Boyle was finally killed that idea of the four fundamental elements, because of all his experiments. He was able to convince the scientific community that, matter is not just made up of four fundamental elements. There's more elements than that, Okay, and then from there, another scientist comes about named Proust. He studied many chemical reactions to determine the composition of compounds. He discovered the law of definite proportions. The law of definite proportions is this: a compound always has the same ratio of elements by mass. For example, carbon dioxide, if you look at carbon dioxide, the ratio between the mass of carbon and oxygen is always going to be, let me think, about 12 to 32, which you simplify that is 3 to 8. You know, for every 3 grams of carbon, you're going to have 8 grams of oxygen. So you discover that for a compound is always going to have that same ratio of elements by mass. You know, so, oh yeah, I have the example here. So like there's all the compounds display that property, and that was very critical in critical discovery in chemistry. But you know, those are the early ideas of the atom. In the next video, we're going to be talking about one of the first atomic theory, really, by Dalton. But make sure you know all these little scientists and their small contributions to the idea of the atom. But that's it for now. The early ideas of the atom in chemistry are as simple as that.